So we haven't done a video in a considerable amount of time, and just want to give everybody an update on the TORO Workmaster project that we undertook. And this is it here. It's up on blocks or on ramps. And I'll just clue you in here as to what we got done. There's so many systems that need addressing on this that I kind of been hopscotching between different systems. As you know, some days you feel like doing hydraulic work, some days you feel like working on the brakes, some days you feel like doing electrical. And so yeah, we've done various things over the last few days here as we had time. And so I'll just give you a quick rundown and give you an update. So we got the hood open here. As you can see, under the hood is most of the electrical, the original electrical. There's a lot of stuff that whoever retrofitted it with a different engine, they did a whole bunch of wiring from the old engine, redid some wiring from the engine to this engine. So originally it had a 12 or 14 horse single cylinder cast iron Cowl or K series, like a 14 or a 12 horse. And then somebody retrofitted a V-twin Honda 20 horse into it. And I'll just show you here. And the engine is all full of oil. So I am not sure what part of the oil on the frame. Underneath it, it's all full of oil. So I'm not sure what oil comes from the engine, what comes from the transmission leaks. But yeah, this is the engine here sitting on the workbench. So you got this out yesterday. I got it sitting up here. So what we got to do here is rebuild the whole engine, go through it, replace all the seals and gaskets and hone it, put new rings in it. Hopefully that's all it needs, is to be honed and new rings. It's bellowing white smoke, so I'm pretty sure the rings are shot. And then the muffler broke off, so we're going to take a Dremel tool and cut off these bird poop welds here. Just get them cut off so that you can pull this off. And then we'll weld that part back to the muffler. The muffler's laying in the back of the machine on the box. So the brakes needed rebuilding. So I cross-referenced the original master cylinder. This is the master cylinder that sends fluid to your wheels when you press the brake pedal. So I matched it with a GM one that's from GM used these in a lot of vehicles in the 60s, like the mid 60s, maybe into the 70s even, but I do know that it matches like a C10, C15 truck, and the vans too had these. So that's what I matched it with. It was a perfect direct match. So I got a new master cylinder on there. The rear brake lines were rusted through and broke off when I took them off the wheel cylinders. So I replaced the lines in the back. So we got the brakes pushing pressure to the rear, but the wheel cylinders need addressing. One of them is leaking. So I'm either going to have to rebuild them or replace them. I'm not sure yet, but I'll do that another time. Right now I feel like doing some of the other stuff. I did run these rear lights to the back. I ran some wire from the light switch up ahead under the hood. I ran a wire all the way back to these lights, and I put taillights on it too. Now I got to send this over to my guy to weld. These corners are broken. This is the engine cowl. This whole box is what covers this whole section up here, this whole midsection. This is also where the seat is mounted to it. So we had to take this cowl off. It needs to be welded. I did straighten out that one side on the bottom, was all beat up and bent out, and so I did a pretty good job bending it back to how it was. And now I'm going to take it over to my welding guy. My neighbor does some of my welding for me, so we'll get that. This is the coupler. This is the rubber coupler that connects the engine to the transmission. So it looks like it's metal, but it's got rubber ends. So inside these end caps, it's got rubber. See? So that's how they isolate the vibration between the engine and the transmission. The transmission is just a hydrostatic pump that when you press this pedal backward, it pumps oil one way. If you press it forward, pushes oil the other way. So what do we have left to do? Oh my goodness, where do we even begin? We got to fix the oil leaks underneath by the transmission. I'm going to power wash everything. Tomorrow's supposed to be literally 60 degrees here, and I'll take it all out and pressure wash the frame out underneath There's so much oil and gunk under here. Kind of like in here is just dirt and oil and ugh. So I'll get her all nice and clean. I'll make sure all the hoses are capped like this. I'll make sure this guy can't be damaged. Probably put him inside a bag and put him in a plastic can or something. So we'll get him cleaned and then we'll get to rebuilding. So inside this cowl here, there was a 12-inch automotive style radiator fan. And then there was a toggle switch up here that when you kicked the toggle switch on, it turned on the power to this automotive style fuel pump. I really don't know why he's using this big fuel pump, because the engine has its own fuel pump, which you bypass and use this automotive one. So there's the gas tank. I did put it out of its mount. And I'm going to put a shut off underneath it because this fitting on the bottom of the tank, here goes through this hole in the. So I'll put a shut off in here somewhere so that you can reach under from the side, reach under and shut off the gas. So I'll put a shut off in the line and make sure there's no leaking. I did clean it. It was a pretty bad mess. And we also got a very cool, I'm not sure you'll be able to see it here, but I'll try and show it to you. We also got a very cool fuel gauge. This is the fuel gauge sending unit. And instead of the wire with a float on a flimsy wire style, this is a stainless steel tube. This diameter tube goes all the way to the bottom and it's got a float on it with a magnet on it. So this is brand new. I got this off the internet. I can leave a link in the description below, but it will fit most anywhere where this type of sending unit for the fuel gauge is inside your tank. Now this type of fuel gauge is available for tanks that are 5 inches deep, 7 inches, 9, 11, 12, 13. So my tank is almost 14 inches, so I use the 12 or the 13 inch. You want to stay off the bottom like a half an inch to 1 inch. You want to stay off the bottom is what they recommend. But I would highly recommend this gauge that I'm switching this to. So I got the new fuel gauge in. Let me go over here and I'll show you. You also get a gauge for the dash with it. So you don't only get the sending unit. You can buy the sending unit in the tank separate. It's just 2 wire. One is ground. So let's say one of these is ground. I think they said blue was ground. And then the brown one would be signal. So and then here's your gauge. I already mounted a gauge in here too. So this is your gauge. Now, the cool part of this gauge is they have a harness plugged into the back of it. See? They have a harness that's waterproof. The connector is waterproof. So one of these lights is the signal to the sending unit. One of these is ground. One of them, I think the orange one, is the LED that lights up the gauge. And then on the back of this, there's a switch that you can press and you can change between 1 of 10 colors on the gauge here. So you can actually change the color of the gauge that the gauge lights up when you turn the lights on. So I'm going to be wiring this. I'm going to be wiring this in with my light switch over here. I'm going to be wiring it in with my light switch so that when you turn the lights on, the LED in the gauge comes on too. So that is a very cool fuel gauge. And there's many applications where this particular fuel gauge could be used, and you just make sure that you select the correct length of it. It comes in multiple lengths. But it's way better than any of the wire, the float on a wire I've seen being used on lawnmowers and stuff. Next, so we did get the fuel gauge situation fixed. I'll do the shut off. We got to rebuild the engine. We got to finish the rear brakes on the rear wheels. But yeah, there's quite a bit to do. I'm also going to redo this throttle. I'm going to reuse this. I actually have it, or I think it's already on in a box on the table. I'm going to put a style of throttle on it again, like was originally on it, where the throttle was in the dash here. I'm also going to move the choke from, he had it in the side of this cowl, on your left side when you were sitting in the seat, you were reaching under next to the seat. I'm going to move the choke up here in the hole in the dash. Probably reuse this hole. Or maybe we move the light switch over here and then move the choke over there so that when you're turning the key with your hand here, you can use your other hand over there for the choke. We'll see. So that's just some of the stuff we have to do here. So we're making progress. It's sometimes when you get going on this and you're planning stuff out, once you have it all planned out, it's almost like the job is half done. Oh, I forgot about the cooling fan. So they had in here, I'm going to see if I can find it. There's a cooling fan that's mounted in this cowl. I guess because he put a bigger engine in it, he decided that this compartment that the engine is in needs a cooling fan. So he had this, oh my goodness. So he had this 12-inch automotive style radiator fan here. Now, it barely fits in the width of this cowl. It barely fits. So I'm going to use, and so there was this fan, whenever you would turn the toggle switch on, so this was the starting procedure. You have this one, there's a toggle switch that you turn on that, where is that here? Here. This is, no, that's not it. There were two toggle switches here by your feet. So there's almost as much to do to start this as an airplane. Yeah, two toggle switches that you turned on. One is the ignition that killed the ignition. Then there was one that kicked the fuel pump and the cooling fan on. And then you turned the key to start it. And you had to pull the choke over on that side. So it was a lot of work to start this. So we're going to rewire it and make it so that you simply turn on the key and then you're going to just start it and pull out the choke and start it. So we're going to use a nice fuse box and we're going to fuse all this stuff and we're going to make it so that the load doesn't go through the ignition. We're going to make the load go through a fuse box with a relay. Make either fuse them, make them go through a relay so that the load isn't on the ignition switch. So we already threw off a lot of the load from the halogen headlights, and we switched them to LEDs. These are my cool 4-inch round LED headlights that I found that fit perfect. See how they fit over this round frame on the machine, and then they have a single bolt mount on the bottom. So I just drilled a hole through the frame, and then I just mounted it. So that's what they look like. So you have the one bolt here that's going through its bracket and holds the light in place, but the light fits so perfect over the existing, what you would call basically a round bushing, a 4-inch, but they fit super slick. So when I do wiring like this, I like to shrink tube and waterproof my connections so that I don't have wiring problems down the road. But here I'm just jimmy rigging the switch with power to see if all the lights work, because I just got the taillights wired from the rear all the way up here. So I'll kick those on for you. The switch was burned out, and if you jiggled around long enough with it, you could make the lights come on momentarily. So I put a new one in. It's basically a golf cart light switch. Basically a golf cart light switch, just a two-prong switch. So I'll put a description, I'll put a link in the description below for this, for the very cool fuel gauge and sending unit that I'm using. And I'll put a link for that cooling fan as well. So for the cooling fan, I forgot to mention that. So instead of a big 12-inch fan that almost takes up the entire, you can barely get it in here. On the end, this is basically 12 inches, so you could barely fit it in here. I went a step smaller, a 10-inch that fits. And these fans, so he had it bolted in with self-tapping screws up on top here, and he had some rivets and some sheet metal, I guess, to make it fit. But you can buy these fans, are very economical, and they come with mounting hardware. There's 2 or 3 ways that you can mount them. They come with hardware. So I'm going to use a size smaller. I'm going to have the proper hardware to mount it. And I also got a cool digital readout controller on which you set a high limit and a low limit. And it will kick that fan. Oh, it's got to wire it with a probe that will strap inside this compartment somewhere, wherever we mount the digital controller. And you can set the high and low limit, so the fan itself, even though it would get power as soon as you would turn the key on, it wouldn't kick on unless it was like whatever temperature high you set in here on that digital controller that I got. So let's say you set the high limit to, okay, it's going to kick on if it reaches 120 degrees in here. So then it will kick the fan on if it reaches 100 degrees. So if it exits enough air where the temperature drops to like 100 degrees, maybe you set it for the low limit is 100, then it would stop the fan at 100 degrees. So very cool stuff that we're going to do here. We also got a nice fused box for all the accessories. We're going to fuse all the different circuits. We also have a relay. We can send all the current through the relay before it goes into the box. So we're going to not cheap out. We're just going to do, well, it's not expensive, but we're going to do it right. Instead of all this cobbledy stuff that's here. I mean, the wiring on this was just a mess. It was just random. Some of it was taped together. Some of it was wire nuts. Some of it was just twisted together and put a piece of tape over it. It was the wiring is atrocious. So we're going to try to make it presentable. So that's the update for now. I'll give you another update here if we get some more of this stuff done. But we're making good progress. I think the hard part is done. That was deciding how we'll do everything. So we got a whole box of parts here that we ordered. So yeah, we can get going and get building.